Hey everyone, Tutor Brian. Here's a book review of The Mirror and the Light by Hilary Mantel. This one is the final installment in the Wolf Hall trilogy that centers around the principal character Thomas Cromwell, who has a rags to riches story in which he becomes the main advisor to King Henry VIII. From a lowly position to probably the de facto second most powerful person in the entire realm of England, this story, the whole trilogy in general, it covers the life of Cromwell, interwoven with all his dealings in the royal court on behalf of the king, for the king, in service of the king, and it is the whole trilogy that is a tremendous work of historical fiction, showing all the possibilities that could have happened based on the historical fact established, and then imagining what takes place in a narrative of a person's life and the characters around that person. In particular, the mirror and the light, it serves as a very, I say very dense conclusion to the Cromwell story, because the book itself is quite a lot of reading. For the large print edition, it is 1,145 pages, whereas the regular print is 757 pages. It's a lot of reading, but it's more than that. Once you get into it, you notice the way that this is like the last hurrah, the final effort to get everything on paper, to put a stamp on this whole narrative that's been established going back to Wolf Hall, book one, book two, Bring Up the Bodies, and now book three, The Mirror and the Light, which is a reference to, I guess, the king, how Cromwell sees the king. He's the mirror and the light of all the sovereigns of Europe. They consider him, put him like on a pedestal in that way. But also, it's a reference, the mirror and the light, as to how Cromwell imagines a thriving England, a thriving country can be under the combined leadership of his and King Henry VIII. Though he would never, go out of his um, sphere of influence and consider himself an almighty ruler. He's always a servant to the king. That's how he views it. But that's kind of where the problems begin, when others in the royal court consider him getting too powerful, and even the king may agree with the others, thinking that Cromwell is getting too powerful. But it's a lot of reading. Like I said before, um, the the way it is just, it seems a little bit elaborated and embellished to kind of get more details in the Cromwell story. There's a lot of flashbacks, a lot of callbacks to and reference to, allusions to the previous books. So moments that happened then are re-examined here in different lights, different angles, different frames. Imagine seeing the story. So the details from the previous books are brought back here, and it's all kind of going back to that last hurrah, the final stamp on it all, the whole story being concluded. I don't like how it's a bit. I don't want to say superfluous. It's still a good book, but there's just a lot of details to navigate through, and so it kind of, the main story is kind of taken on detours with all the flashbacks and then the callbacks to the other books, and even the turning point of the whole story. I almost missed the turning point because there's so many details going through, taking place, and it's just so subtle. Like, oh, this is it. This is when the story is changing, and this is the turning point. I barely noticed. I was just caught up with all the many pages of reading that it just happened so subtly to me. But then it's noticeable. This is the turning point, and it just kind of leaves you wanting more once you see what's going to happen at the end. It's as if it's begging for a strong epilogue or some type of rewrite fan fiction, a way to turn the table around, because those with just a little bit of knowledge about the history, what really happens, it when you see a historical fiction and the story is retold, you kind of hope for a different ending. It reminds me of the prequel to Star Wars with the rise of Anakin Skywalker and then the transformation to Darth Vader. You already know what's going to happen, but just seeing it unfold, you kind of wish sometimes, if you hoping for a more positive feeling, a more positive vibe, a better outcome, you kind of wish it would be different, but it can't be that way. Everything's already set in motion for the story to take place as it's already been established with the original trilogy. Also, it reminds me of Spartacus too. I mean, as well, the the TV show, how it takes the history and makes a story about it, episodic story for television about it, and you know what's going to happen in the end, but once you start to really root for the characters and you hope for different outcomes and maybe just a rewrite, just throw away the history books and just go with a different story, better ending, a happy ending, a satisfying ending, but that can't be. And so with the mirror and the light, it is the same way. The whole thing is a big build up to the conclusion, and there is a part at the end where it shows what happens historically, and so the story is put to an end, and the details, just for information purposes, are provided at the end, so you can see down the line. Otherwise, it would just be more books, but that won't be the case. So it's just like sometimes they do the flash forward, so many years in the future, and like in a movie or TV show, you know what happens. So this is the same way. It does it the same way. And of the three books, I think Wolf Hall, I would consider that one a must read. It's a page turner, and it's just the starting book, so you can decide for yourself if you want to go any more. That book itself, standalone, will suffice. And then the book two, Bring Up the Bodies, it is, if you feel like you want more, then yeah, read that book. And it's it's um, it's like a companion to the first one. It is the book two is a companion to the it goes forward more in the historical timeline and gives more details what happens with all the main characters involved, especially Thomas Cromwell, the principal character. Now, the Mirror and the Light, the final book, it's it's only, I would recommend only if you really like Wolf Hall and you you want you want to finish the whole story of Thomas Cromwell. Otherwise, you can bypass it, because it is a lot of reading, a lot of details, a lot of just storytelling, and the flashbacks go so much more into the background. And when we think that's already covered in Wolf Hall, all the background knowledge, childhood of Thomas Cromwell, adolescence, all his travels, his adventures, and all the things that made him what he is now. But then it goes back, it covers that again in this book. So it's just like putting extra wrapping on the gift, extra bow on the wrapped gift. It's just more detail upon detail upon detail, just fleshing out the whole life of Cromwell in a send-off manner, to put a stamp on this all, put a finale to all that's been building up. And it has that vibe about it. It's like a real labor of love for the author, getting this all out on paper, and this is what we have. Now allow me to read some passages from the book. Better today, the king says. meaning himself, in no haste to see his daughter, or wishing to seem in no haste, he strolls in the garden, Rafe Sadler at his side, examining the new planting. I shall spend a week here, perhaps toward the end of summer. That's you on the road, he thinks. Rafe catches his eye. I shall visit you, Sadler, the king promises. Master Sadler lives down the lane, he tells Jane. Did you know that he married a beggar woman? No, Jane says, adding nothing. She came to the gate of Lord Cromwell's house, two little children at her skirts, and no resources in the world. But Cromwell here, perceiving her to be of an honest demeanor, he took her in. Henry warms to his own story. His color is high, his manner easy and gracious, his eye brighter than for weeks. Master Sadler, seeing her flourish day by day, his heart was won, and despite her want of fortune, he married her. There is something lacking in Jane's response, or at least the king thinks so. Was that not great charity? Henry urges. A man who might have married to his advantage, to match with a lowly woman, only for the virtue he perceived in her. Jane murmurs. The king leans down to catch it. Oh yes, I expect they were marvelously put about. Cromwell, were Sadler's family not angry? But Cromwell here pleaded their cause. He said, nothing must stand in the way of true love. And the king lifts Jane's hand and kisses it. Cromwell was right. The signal is given. The moment arrives. The king beams around the room. This day has been long in coming. You may conduct her to us, Cromwell. He turns to Rafe. Lord Cromwell has behaved to my lady daughter with such tenderness and care that he could not have done more if he were my kinsman, which of course the king seems surprised at his own words. He could not be. But I mean to reward him and all his house. The doors are flung open. The king and queen are still against the light, golden sun and silver moon. Mary takes in a deep, ragged breath, and he stands behind her, because what else can he do? That evening the king releases him, so he can be alone with his family. They will retire early, and there will be no policy discussed or paper signed. Helen says, You are exhausted. Will you not stroll down the lane and sit in our summer house for an hour? Gregory and Mr. Richard are there already. The evening, dove-like, is settling itself to rest, when the chronicles of the reign are composed by our grandchildren or by those in another country distant from these fading fields and glow-warm light. They will reimagine the meeting between the king and his daughter, the orations they made each other, the mutual courtesies, the promises, the blessings. They will not have witnessed, they could not record, the Lady Mary's wobbling curtsy, or how the king's face flushes as he crosses the room and sweeps her up, her sniffling and whimpering as she grips the white gold tissue of his jacket, his gasp, his sob, his broken endearments, and the hot tears that spring from his eyes. Jane the Queen stands dry-eyed, shy, until a thought strikes her and she removes a jewel from her finger. Here, wear this. Mary's mewing cuts off. He is reminded of Lady Bryan, holding out a teething ring to the Lady Bastard. Oh, Mary juggles with the ring, almost drops it. It is a vast diamond, and it holds the light of the afternoon in an ice-white grasp. Margaret Douglas grips Mary's wrist and hoops the jewel on a finger. Too big, she is desolate. It can be reset. The king holds out his flat palm. The gem vanishes into some pocket. You are generous, sweetheart, he says to Jane. He, Cromwell, has seen the flicker in the king's eye as he calculates the worth of the stone. You are gracious, madame. Mary says to the queen, I wish you nothing but what is your comfort. I hope you will have a child soon. I shall pray for it daily. I take you now as my own lady mother, as if God had ordained the same. But the queen says, perturbed, she motions her husband to bend his head, whispers to him. He says, smiling, the queen says it would be hard even for God to ordain, as she is but 7 years your senior. Mary stares at the queen. Tell her it is an expression of my regard. It is an established form of well-wishing. Her Grace should not. She understands, don't you, sweetheart? Henry smiles down at Jane. Shall we go in? The servants wait, kneeling, for the royal party to pass, but Helen wafts in with halved lemons on a silver tray. Seeing she has come at the wrong moment, she draws back and curtsies deeply. The scent of the lemons cuts the air. Jane smiles absently at Helen. Mary does not seem to see her, but she does not trip over her either. The king checks his stride and seems about to speak, then turns to his wife and daughter, who face each other in the doorway. I will not go before you, Jane says. Madame, you are the queen, you must. Jane holds out her hand, naked without its diamond. That star, pocketed, beams its rays at the king's belly. Let us go in like sisters, Jane says, neither one before the other. Henry glows with pleasure. Is she not a jewel in herself? Is she not, Cromwell? Come, my angels, let us ask God to bless our repast and our new amity, and I pray it may never falter. But later, when their grace is made, and the king has washed his hands in a marble basin, and the dishes are served, and he has eaten artichokes and said they are his favorite thing in the world, he falls silent and seems to brood. At last burst out, Sadler, is that your wife? She who made her curtsy as we came in? He chuckles. I think if she had come a beggar to my gate, I would have married her too. I see it was no charity. Such eyes, such lips. He glances at Jane, and she has already given Sadler a son. Jane neither sees nor hears. She just goes on steadily eating her way through her trout pasty, slices of cucumber scattered around her like green half-moons. It is as if the Blessed Catherine is inspiring her. If it had been the other one sitting here, she would have laughed and set up some peevish revenge. He is suspicious of Gardner's absence. What is he working at? Charles Brandon comes in and confirms that Cromwell said that if he were king, he would spend more time in Woking. He remembers another occasion. The king gave Cromwell a ring from his own finger, and Cromwell said, "It fits me exactly. It needs no adjustment." "And what do you draw from that?" he asks. "That I am the right size for king?" "What is the right size, my Lord Suffolk? Are you not nearer it than me?" He is saddened by Brandon. To Norfolk, a Cromwell is just a blot to be erased, like a discrepancy in bookkeeping. But Brandon's family made their name by audacity. He hoped there might be some fellow feeling. Charles cannot settle to his questions, but walks about, and in time walks out of the room, calling sharply to his folk to accompany him, as one whistles to a dog. One day the door opens. He expects Gardner, but it is Brandon again. Charles sits down, sighing heavily, on a little upholstered stool, so his knees rise absurdly under his chin. "Why doesn't your lordship take this chair?" But Charles sits like a penitent, puffing and sighing and looking around the room. His eyes search the painted walls, those scenes of paradises, verdant hills, and brooks. Is she behind there? The other one? Not in her own person, my lord. She lies in the chapel at rest. As for the picture, I painted her out. What? Personally? No, my lord, I had a professional do it. He pictures himself sneaking by night with a huge obliterating brush. You're a good fellow, Charles, he says. I'd rob a house with you if I had to. Brandon grins behind his big beard. Have you robbed many houses? In my wild days, you know. We all had those, Charles says. I wouldn't rob a house with the king. You'd say to him, stand there and whistle if the watch comes. And at the first footfall, he'd scramble off and leave you to it, your leg over the sill. I don't think he'd go robbing in all conscience, Charles says. He'd be breaching his own peace, wouldn't he? And who would he rob? He can distrain our goods if he likes, and pauperize us all. He rubs his forehead. I'm glad to hear you make a jest, Crumb. Look here. Wyatt knows of your secret dealings, Wriothesley says, and, as he has often boasted, the thoughts of your heart. Not that they are anything to boast about, he says. You strained my charity, Wriothesley. Still, when I am set at large, I will try not to hold these things against you. Once again that fluttering behind his ribs of the organ whose workings have caused Wyatt himself so much pain. Love slayeth my heart, fortune is depriver of all my comfort, my pleasant days they fleet away and pass, but daily yet the ill doth change into the worse. He says, the words emerge suddenly unguarded, what will you do without me? When a man such as Wyatt goes to work, he works for those who appreciate him. Without me you will read the lines as written, but you will never read between them. Marillac will make fools of you, and Chapuis too. If he returns, Charles and Francois will scramble your brains like a basin of eggs. Within a year, the king will be fighting the Scots or the French, or likely both, and he will bankrupt us. None of you can manage matters as I can, and the king will quarrel with you all, and you with each other. A year from now, if you sacrifice me, you will have neither honest coin nor honest minister.